Okay guys, so here is the second part of this tutorial, and I'll be showing you how I was able to track the camera and also texture this scene. So let's get started. Okay, so first let's create our camera, and okay, so let's position that properly. It's still over here. We're going to move the camera up close to the car, well, a bit behind the car. We're going to rotate it so that it can point at the vehicle. So right now I'm just fixing the camera angle so that it can point directly at the vehicle. And now I'm going to change the focal length, but after that, let me just fix this. So we drag it down a bit. And now we're going to change the focal length from 50 mm to 80 mm. And this is going to give us a nice telephoto lens. So we can get us a kind of like a close-up look to the vehicle. And now we're going to add our composition guides. We add a rule of thirds. And we're just going to fix the vehicle onto one of these vertical lines so they can get nice composition. And we're going to rotate the camera a bit because I want the vehicle to be from behind, but I want the camera to show the vehicle from behind, but like at a certain angle. So let us just rotate the camera some more. And good. So this is my starting point, and this is what I want it to look like when we start animating the camera. So now let us copy the path of the vehicle, and we're going to use this to track the camera onto. So let's select the camera and go into the object constraint and add a follow path constraint. And now we're going to target the NURBS path 001. That's the name of the second NURBS path. And this is what we're going to use to animate our camera. Now let us add a keyframe to the location and rotation of the camera so we can lock it onto the vehicle. Let us also follow curve. Select that at the bottom right. You can see here. Okay, so the camera is a bit misplaced. So let us fix the position of the camera again. So let us rotate it. We can drag it up, rotate it to face the car. Good. All right, it's a misplaced again. So let us fix it once again. Let us delete these keyframes and fix it. Because if you notice, when I follow curve, the camera starts being misplaced. So we have to keyframe it again. Okay, so let's fix the rotation. And let us keyframe once again, location and rotation. To do that, you need to press I. Press the I button to insert the keyframes. So you press I and then choose location and rotation in the list. And let us animate the offset. To do that, you click the button right next to the offset word. Okay, so we start from beginning and we're going to drag the numbers all the way to the end. And then we're going to press the button on the right to end that keyframe. Good. So now we have a keyframe for our offset. So the movement of the camera is set. So now all we have to do is make sure the car is within the frame of the camera. So let us go ahead and fix that right now. Okay, so let's go back to the camera frame. Now when I press play, you can see the camera is moving beneath the road. This is a problem right here. So what we need to do is move the path above the road so the camera doesn't be placed beneath the road. So let us fix that right now. We will select the path and carry it up a bit so it can be above the road. Okay, so let's drag it up. Alright, so now we are above the road. And this is what we want. We don't want the camera below the road. So let's start over and see what it looks like. Okay, so now we have another problem. The camera is above the vehicle. So let's delete those keyframes and fix the position of the camera. So we're going to delete the rotation and location keyframe. Do not delete the offset keyframe because that's the camera movement onto the pad. We're just dealing with rotation and location. So we press I and then choose location and rotation to track the keyframe. And now the camera is going below again. So in order to fix this, let's follow the car. Let's see where the camera goes. Okay, so boom, right there. You see it goes below the road at that corner. So now what we need to do is raise that camera up. Yeah, so the animation process of the camera takes some time, people. It's not a quick thing. You have to go back, fix, edit, make sure it's done properly. That's how the animating is done. So let's fix the camera position. We carry it to the side. And we add a location and rotation again. Okay. Let's see, we rotated again. And we carried up a bit. And we'll fix the location and rotation again. So I'm just tracking keyframe by keyframe at this point in time until I can have a perfect frame. Okay. Now let's see what it looks like when we play back. Okay, so it looks good up to a certain point. Up to that point, it looks good. So let us tweak these keyframes a bit because it's a bit. Let's scale this one. You know, just trying to tweak it so that I can have a smooth animation. Okay. Alright, so you can see the camera moves away from the vehicle comes out the frame. So let's rotate this again and fix the camera. So this is what I keep doing for each frame. Every time the car comes out of the frame, I just fix the camera, the location and rotation of the camera. That's all I have been doing throughout this entire process. So this is what you have to do until we reach the end of this animation. So we're just basically just fixing the rotation and the location of the camera as the vehicle continue moving, so we can get that perfect frame. Yes, the animation process really takes time and it's a lot of work, so you have to bear with me. And we just continue fixing, rotate again. We press I, location and rotation. Okay, it looks good up to that point. Up to that point, we fix again. We rotate the camera. In order to do rotations, the shortcut is G to select an axis, and then you can press Z, X, or Y. So G and then Z, X, or Y to do rotations. So if you want to rotate in the X, you press X. If you want to rotate in the Y, you press Y. Rotate in the Z, you press Z. So you press G and then you can press Z or X or Y. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm just using shortcuts. So G, then I press X. No, press Z to rotate it, and then press X, Z to move it up. Good, so this is what it looks like. So it's going good so far. Okay, let's rotate that again. Location or rotation with I. Okay, so alright, looking good so far. Oh, it's out of the frame a bit. Okay, so let's rotate this again. Bring the camera down. Alright. This is looking good here. We rotate again. Now we press I, location and rotation. Alright. We rotate again. So all you have to do is just follow my process and apply this to your own animation. It takes time in order to track the camera properly. So press I, location and rotation. Okay. And we rotate it again. We bring it down. I, location and rotation. Again. I, location and rotation. And let's see what the playback looks like. Alright, it's looking really nice here. So this is perfect. Okay, we rotate it again. We press G and the axis X. X for the position. And I like this angle again. Down, and I press down. Then you press I and location and rotation again. This is perfect. Yeah. So let's rotate it again. Let me just speed up this process because this is just repetition at this point in time. I'm just rotating and changing the location of the camera so that I can keep the car within the frame. So I'm sure you know what to do at this point in time. You just continue keyframing, same thing I'm doing, and let me just speed it up. Okay, so we are finally finished keyframing the camera animation, and now let us play it back and see what it looks like in real time. Okay, so let me start from the beginning. Okay, let's start from the beginning and let us play. As you can see, we have a nice smooth animation and it's following the car beautifully. Now this is what I call camera animation. You can tweak this however you want. You can make the animation smoother, but this is basically the process you see for all those car animations. So now we're on to the texturing. So this is the texturing process I did for the road. I just got a texture image from the internet. Just some random image I found of a road on the internet, and I put that into Blender and I just tweaked it a bit. I add in the color ramp into the roughness, and I mix that with the Musgrave and the noise texture just to give it this nice bumpy looking effect, this rustic kind of look. As you can see, this is what the road is looking like. It's not very detailed, but it's detailed enough to look good in our scene. And as you can see, these artifacts at the corner of the road, I didn't bother about cleaning this up because this is not going to be visible in our camera. We're not going to see this when we render it because the car is moving so fast that you won't notice these defects in the scene. So if you have things like this, don't worry about it. Only show things in the scene that need to be fixed. And for the normal map, I added the roughness, the noise texture, and the Musgrave texture, and that's what I got for the road. Okay, so now I'm on to the lighting, and I'm going to add an HDRI to my scene. And I got this from Polyhaven. This is a website where you can get various types of HDRIs, models, textures, you name it. Anything that has to do with 3D, this is the website for you. I'm not sponsored by them by any chance, but it's a good website, so I'm just sharing it with you. And I also found this Kiara 9 Dusk. I love this one because this fits perfectly with my scene, because this is a perfect scenario for my scene. As you can see, it has nice mountains and a nice background. You cannot choose any HDRI for your scene or else it's not going to look realistic. You have to choose something that blends in with the story you're trying to portray. For example, I cannot choose an indoor lighting for this outdoor scene. That's why a lot of new beginners do stuff and it looks unrealistic. You need to do things that apply to real life. So let me show you an example of what I mean. As you can see here, this HDRI perfectly fits in my scene. Look how this looks when you look at it. This is not even rendered yet and it looks somewhat realistic. You can see the mountain ranges and everything blends with the scene. Now look at this. When I add in a different HDRI, look what happens. You see how unrealistic it looks? Because the background does not fit perfectly with the render. You see, it automatically looks unrealistic when you choose a wrong background. So one of the most important tip in making realistic renders is to try and apply things that happen in real life. You can't choose something with a different perspective, and you can't choose something with a different, different feeling, because it's not going to be impactful to your scene. Now let's try a different one. Look at this one. This is another outdoor scene, and you can see it's like a walkway, and look, it doesn't fit with the scene. The car looks very small. The car automatically looks like a toy. And let's try a different one. Let's look for a different one. Okay, so this is an indoor shot. So you see, even though the lighting looks good, it doesn't look realistic because vehicles don't drive with indoor lighting, and this is a restaurant. Look how it looks. It looks like a toy. Okay, so let's go back to my original scene and let me darken it a bit. I'm just darkening the HDRI, just decreasing the brightness to give it like a dark afternoon kind of look, like probably like 6:30 in the evening, or like when they have sunset, just to give it a nice look, a nice dark feeling, so the lighting for the vehicle can show properly. As you can see, I have the headlights here for the vehicle. If I use cycles, look how realistic this looks. And back to Eve. Eve doesn't look bad at all. And let me show you the vehicle textures. So for the texture for the vehicles, I use a mixed texture. I use green and brown. The brown is for the slight stains that you see on the vehicle. I found this model online because it would have taken longer to do this tutorial. So I just found this free model online and I retextured it. That's all I did. The tires, I left the tires how it was because that's what it came with. But for the body of the car and the lights, I retextured that. And I added a color ramp for the body of the vehicle. You can see here, when I tweak this, you see the color starts to change. Yes, it gives variation to the colors. That's what the color ramp does. And I add in a noise texture just to give it some nice variations. And for the roughness, I added in a noise and a Musgrave texture, and I combined them in a mixed texture node. And I also use a color ramp to alter between the two. Color ramps are very, very useful because they give variations to your textures, so you should utilize them in your scenes. And I just edited and tweaked the settings until I was satisfied. And I also added these same things into my normal map. That give it this bumpy, rough looking feeling. That's what normal maps do. And this is how my stuff looks. As you can see here, I just joined it back to the normal map. And for the lighting, I just added an emission shader and I bumped it up, and I added a texture to the noise. I just added an emission shader and I just increased it, give it a light orange look. And that's how I was able to get a lighting. Just a simple texture, nothing too fancy. You see, you can decrease it, increase it. It looks really nice. It gives the car lights. You know, you decrease, you increase, decrease, increase. You can turn up the brightest how far you want it, but try to make it look as realistic as possible, because if it's too bright, it's going to come off as fake. This is another tip of making realistic renders. Try to make it look like how a car light would look in real life. That's how you make realistic renders. You try to make it look like if it's real life. So the concepts you apply to your work has to look real. So this is just another model I found. I added it to my scene. It's a ready-made model of a police vehicle. I duplicated this and just dispersed it around the scene just to give it some kind of interesting look. I don't just want my vehicle to just be driving on an empty road. I want it to have some kind of, life. So I added these. These came textured, so I don't have to texture them. I just put them into my scene. And I also added these metallic structures. These look really nice in my scene, so I added these because I saw these in a photo on Pinterest, and I was like, you know what, let me add this into my scene also, and it looks really good. This helps with the realism. So I just added the array modifier, and I used the curve modifier to line it up into the road. So let me show you how I created this model. Yeah, and this is the curve modifier. Yeah. Okay, so let me create a cube. I'm going to create a cube here and increase the size and add some subdivisions. And I'm going to add a wireframe modifier. And as you can see, when I added the wireframe modifier, each subdivision becomes a whole, like a cage. This is the beauty of wireframe modifier. And I also added a triangulate modifier, and this made everything into triangles. This is how simple those structures are, and this is how I created them. It's not complicated, it's just simple modifiers and different tweaking, and that's how I created them. Then I just drag it up, extruded it, and then I just add in some subdivisions and some loops, and I just press enter, and you see, this is what the structure looks like. So this is how I was able to create those structures you see there. So now for the texturing, well, this is just a simple metallic structure. It's nothing too fancy, just a simple metallic structure, and a Musgrave texture was added to the roughness. This helps to give it some, just some details. It's not too detailed because it's not going to be visible in our scene because the car is our main focus. So we didn't have to put a lot of emphasis onto this model. We just do some quick textures and just to give it some life and detail. That's all. Remember, the only time you do detailed textures in a 3D scene is when it's going to be visible in your render. If it's not going to be visible in your render, then don't stress over it. Just focus on the things that actually matter because you'll be able to optimize your scene better and you won't have a lot of heavy textures into your scene. So your render times are going to be shorter also. So just keep the stuff that are necessary. And for this, I added a cube and I made it like an atmospheric kind of feeling. You can see I added the cube and it gives this nice atmosphere. This was just a simple thing. Just get a cube, stretch it out, make it big, cover the entire scene as possible, and just add in a volumetric texture and tweak the density, and that's it. And for these posters, I just found some images online, some PNG images, transparent backgrounds, and I just imported them as planes and I just added in the base color and then add in the alpha, and that's how I was able to get these signs. I didn't texture anything. I just found it on the internet, brought it into the scene and added an alpha, and that's how it is. Very, very simple. And to show it, must select alpha blend, because if you're rendering with Eve, you have to select alpha blend, because if you use opaque, it's not going to show. So unless you're using cycles, then you don't need to select all of this. And that is what I did for all these signs. So you see, I just added signs on these railings just to give it some realism, because in life, especially when you're looking on the road, there's usually signs everywhere. So that's what I wanted in my scene. I wanted signs. This helps with the realism. And the beauty about it is that I don't have to texture it. It's already created for me. So I just had to bring it into the scene and just place it where I want it. This is the beauty of 3D. Put it in places that I know that would look good, and that's about it. And I also added in another vehicle, an old rusty kind of vehicle. This was also a ready-made model, but it came with its own texture, so I didn't have to texture it. And I just placed it into the scene just to give the scene some more life. I like when my scene looks interesting. This helps with the composition and the lifelike feeling of your scene. So I just duplicated it and add different variations of it. I turned this one upside down just to make it look like if it's an old car that has been damaged or something like that. Just to give the scene some life. And that's about it. This is what my scene looks like, and this is how I was able to achieve that realistic look. And the next thing I also added was lighting. So let me show you how that looks. So you see, add an area light. Let me go to the render. Okay, good. I added an area light to the railing. I didn't add no lamp or anything, just put a light right there because that's not going to be seen. So I just put an area light right there. I let the light shine down onto it, so it can look like if it has street lights. But really and truly, it's not a street light. It's just some lights I put up there. So this helps to give the scene some more life. You see how the road texture starts showing and start popping? This is the beauty of using lighting, various types of lighting. So first I darkened the HDRI, that's the main lighting, and then I added in these lights so it can be like street lights. And that is all I did for this. I did it for all the railings, and I put the power to about 300. And that is how I was able to get this. And for the second one, I did the same thing. For the third, I did the same thing. For the fourth, I did the same thing. I just added all the street lights to these metallic structures because it looks interesting. Very, very interesting. It looks like if it has street lights connected to it. And this is what I added to my render just to give it a nice look. And now this is the completion of my scene. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like when I render it. So guys, this is how I was able to achieve that realistic look. It just takes time, and you have to have artistic knowledge to understand what looks good for the scene and what can make the scene look more realistic. If you want these project files, you can become one of my patrons. The link is in the description, and you'll have access to all my tutorial files, and you can use whatever you want to use it for. It's free to use, and I just want to help the community. So you can look at my Patreon and subscribe to my Patreon and get access to this and look and see how it was done. So now let us go and render this scene. Okay, so when you're rendering the scene, make sure that your resolution is 1920 by 800 and your frame rate is 24 frames per second. Make sure you don't render this as a video, make sure you render it as an image, because if by any chance halfway through the render your video is corrupt or you have power outage or something happens, you will not be able to continue. However, if you render as images, you can always continue from where you left off. That is the beauty of rendering in an image format. And the highest image format with the most quality is usually the OpenEXR format. This is a format used by a lot of VFX studios, and a lot of big budget movies are usually rendered in OpenEXR. And OpenEXR multi-layer is for persons who want to get into render passes. But I will teach you about render passes later on in the future. So for now, just render your image as a PNG file and let's see how it looks. Okay, so now it's rendering and this is the final process. So thank you for watching my tutorial, and I hope that what I taught you today can be applied to your own work and for your future projects. And just a reminder, make sure you check my Patreon in the description below, and you can also support the channel by buying me a coffee. You know, it helps me to keep doing tutorials and doing what I love all the time. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you.
Today, the liquor been taking the pain away. I heard you was giving your chain away. That's kinda like giving your fame away. What's wrong with you? I sit in a box where the owners do.